want to demonstrate to its own population, but demonstrate to the region that it has survived sustained war with the world's one superpower and that regional power, Israel.
Do you think Iran, especially the IRGC and the leadership of Iran, do you think they'll be able to stay in place?
And it seems that the Israelis did this without collaborating or colluding with the US.
For how long can this relationship continue, where Israel just seems to be pulling and leading the US into a bigger and bigger war with Iran?
I mean, first, we can't underestimate the strength of the US-Israel relationship. It's long, deep, multifaceted, multidimensional. But Trump is going to sort of want to flex his muscles with Netanyahu. I think it's in Donald Trump's interest, not just the US, Donald Trump's interest to de-escalate herein.
Hi, good day. Welcome to another episode of Unapologetic. I'm your host, Quilliam, and I'm joined today by Neil Quilliam from Chatham House. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Neil, thank you. I know you're a very busy person, especially at this time. Just to get straight into it, Israel, along with the USA, about 3 weeks ago, just less than 3 weeks ago, killed Ali Khamenei and 40 Iranian leaders. Since then, they've killed Ali Larijani. There's been lots of strikes on Iran. Iran has retaliated by hitting key military bases and oil and gas infrastructure around the region. Just last night, Israel attacked the South Pars gas field, and Iran retaliated by hitting the Ras Laffan gas field in Qatar. There were missiles flying at Riyadh and a few other gas fields. It seems like Iran are almost now at a full-on war with the Gulf countries. Israel must be quite happy about this.
I think Israel is happy. I mean, it's really sort of pushing the envelope on this. I mean, hitting South Pars was a serious escalation, and we've seen the response from that. And it seems that the Israelis did this without collaborating or colluding with the US. So it seems that they've taken an independent action, and this has led to this big escalation last night and this morning, hitting key energy assets right across the Gulf, notably Ras Laffan, of course, but also Yanbu, hitting the port in Yanbu and a refinery, which is the one area that Saudi Arabia is able to export its crude from. So I think this step was probably designed or encouraged to escalate the war and to push the Gulf states into considering a more kinetic response to Iranian strikes.
Okay. Now, I mean, it's you said that Israel seems to have done this without the U.S. sort of green light, but it's not the first time. I mean, this has almost been going on for 2 years now, where Israel seems to be pushing the envelope, either doing some strike on Iran or elsewhere, and then the U.S. gets involved. For how long can this relationship continue, where Israel just seems to be pulling and leading the U.S. into a bigger and bigger war with Iran?
I mean, first, we can't underestimate the strength of the US-Israel relationship. It's long, deep, multifaceted, multidimensional. So the relationship itself is absolutely fine. The issue with this in particular is the impact, the longer-term impact on the price of oil, on the price of gas, and the impact that has, not just on the global economy, of course, but on the US and on Trump's midterm election prospects. We've seen this morning that Secretary Bessent has said that they're considering lifting sanctions on Iranian crude that's at sea on the ships, which is quite a staggering move, and it's also considering its own independent strategic petroleum release in addition to the one that was agreed to the IEA. So clearly, the US is quite alarmed at what's happened over the last 24 hours, and President Trump will be very, very concerned about the midterms. So I think we are probably coming to an inflection point where the US and Trump, I should say, not the US, but Trump is going to sort of want to flex his muscles with Netanyahu and get him to curtail this independent action, because there are consequences that the US, or there are costs that the US now have to pay for Israel's actions. So this takes it into a new dimension.
Okay, so I mean, after last night's action, the Saudi foreign minister said that now it's within Saudi Arabia's rights to defend itself and to strike Iran. They haven't done that yet. Donald Trump came out and tweeted this morning, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars, gas field in Iran. A relatively small section of the whole has been hit. He was quite angry, and he says further on in the tweet, no more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field. Clearly, I mean, he's done this a few times. We've seen in the last 2 years, he's even used sometimes, he's sworn and used some, condescending words with regards being frustrated with Benjamin Netanyahu. But as you've said, he has, for the large part, the relationship between the US and Israel is solid, and he's moved ahead. He seems to be really, really agitated, and it seems like that tweet for now has de-escalated things. There has been no major attacks since then on oil facilities. For how long can this last? I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, I think it's in Donald Trump's interest, not just the US, Donald Trump's interest to de-escalate herein, because the risk of escalation is right on a precipice at the moment. I mean, the Iranian strikes since yesterday afternoon have hit key infrastructure right across the Gulf. And that has sent the oil price up, as we've seen, and it certainly sent the gas price up, and it's probably extended the time through which Ras Laffan is going to be out of operation. We've already seen that the Qataris are selling sort of birthing places in Rotterdam at the moment, right out until April. So it means that oil prices are going to be stuck where they are. They're going to be probably going up for the next 3 or 4 months, which is significant. So that's going to force Trump to squeeze Israel on this and curtail its activities. At the same time, I mean, the Gulf states will now need to begin to reconsider. Have they reached a point where they're going to actually have to engage in kinetic activity, where they're going to have to join this conflict? I don't think they will. I don't think they want to go down that route. And Donald Trump would know that an escalation of that size then makes everything way beyond his control. I actually believe that what could have started as a discrete operation or discrete war in his mind, where he could have declared victory after 5, 6 days or 7 days because they had taken out the top leadership of the regime, that's now out of his hands. He's no longer in that position, I think, where he can adequately declare victory, even within his own mind, and believe that.
Okay. Now, I mean, I just want to draw sort of parallels behind Israel's strategy in this regional war and things they've done to the Palestinians over the last 30 years. So they've decapitated Iran's leadership, which is generally seen as a hardline leadership in the region. They've done the same thing over the 30 years of fighting Hamas and fighting the PA and fighting various Palestinian factions. Obviously, Iran is sanctioned. Similarly, Gaza was under severe sanction for a long time. Obviously, this is different. It's international sanctions, whereas Israel was applying sanctions almost exclusively and controlling what goes in and out of Gaza. There's already been, many references. You've probably used it in some of the interviews you've had, but there's already references of, Israel maybe now going and mowing the lawn in Tehran or in Iran every so often, something they would do in Gaza a lot. What's the parallels you think? I mean, it seems to me to be clear that Israel, were very smart about putting a wedge between the various Palestinian factions and eventually leading in the Palestinian situation, leading to a situation where October 7th was almost inevitable, very frustrated. And now they seem to be employing the same tactic and at the same time embroiling the Gulf states that are generally, allies of the USA, are generally quite peaceful, drawing them now into a war. What's your comments on that?
Well, I think what Israel has managed to achieve or has done is, through its relationship with the US, has been not simply just to decapitate Hezbollah and downgrade it, and to decapitate Hamas and to decapitate the Iranian leadership, but it's acquired a very large operational scope through which it can intervene in Lebanon, almost at will, certainly within its airspace, and we've seen ground forces going in at the moment. It can intervene in Iranian airspace as and when it wishes, or as and when it calculates that there is a threat or a risk to it. And I think that's so. If were there a ceasefire today or tomorrow, or were Donald Trump to declare victory and hostilities would stop, the next issue is, well, when does Israel choose to go back in again and carry out strikes against what it would see as immediate threats? So it has this. It's created this space in which it can operate more or less freely. And the cost of doing that, particularly this time around in this conflict, which started on the 28th of February, is that the Gulf states, because of their positioning, because they host U.S. bases, they are the ones sort of bearing and paying the costs for this. I mean, that's how I would characterize it. But obviously, amongst the Gulf states, you have two of those, Bahrain, and you have the UAE that has signed the Abraham Accords with Israel. And irrespective of the hits that both of those countries have taken, and we know that the UAE has taken most hits from Iran, that relationship, those accords will endure. But it means that there's a fission amongst the Gulf states between those that are allied or at least working very, very closely with Israel, and those that aren't. And Donald Trump's goal to sort of bring in the other Gulf states or expand the Abraham Accords is now sort of that's clearly dead in the water.
I mean, it's what are the Gulf states supposed to do in this situation? They have U.S. bases there. There was a presumption that this would provide them with some sort of relief, and in the event that an Iranian attack or another attack was occurred. Those bases have not proved to be effective in terms of protecting them from Iranian strikes. The U.S. has put a lot more attention in protecting Israel from strikes. At the same token, I don't think the Gulf states are in a position to tell the U.S. yet, you need to start leaving our region. We need to close down your bases. There'll be blowback for that. They can't really pivot towards another power soon enough. What are they supposed to do in this? They seem to be like sitting ducks, and Israel does seem to be actively wanting them to be embroiled in a war to deplete and weaken them. What's your comments on that?
I'm not sure that Israel wants to defeat and weaken them, but I think Israel would definitely calculate there is a benefit to 5 of those 6 states at least sort of engaging directly in conflict with Iran, because it would then materially and optically put them on the same side with Israel and the U.S. in this confrontation with Iran. And I think that's probably a goal or an ambition of Israel, because then optically that really changes the security framework in the region, especially going forward. In terms of what can the Gulf states do, they may feel frustration, they may feel anger, that they've been dragged into this war, or they're bearing the consequences of this war. And one of the principal antagonists is the U.S., of course, a major ally. But those states have no alternative than to stick close with the U.S. It is the major security partner for all of the Gulf states. And going forward, they're going to want to get closer to the U.S., hoping that they can get some form of security guarantee. We've seen, the weaknesses or the vulnerabilities around that, but there's no alternative. China isn't going to suddenly materialize and come into this framework. We've seen what the European states are doing. They are lending some sort of defensive support to most of the Gulf states, but there's no alternative. The U.S. cannot be compensated for in this, and I think what we'll see the Gulf states draw even closer to the U.S. in a bid to get closer than Israel.
Okay, you say they'll try to outmaneuver Israel and get closer to Israel. You think they'll be successful in that? Do you think? And I'm not just saying that in terms of the Gulf's sort of own initiative, but the fact that Israel seems to be on the back foot in terms of public relations. There's a split in MAGA where many people who are Trump fans are very upset that it seems like Israel is now running the U.S. foreign policy. There's been a similar shift among young voters in the U.S. among the Democrats. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think the Gulf states can displace Israel. So within the sort of U.S. political system is, as I said before, I mean, the relationship, irrespective of what we're seeing, there are splits in Maghreb, of course, but irrespective of that, the sort of, the U.S.-Israel relationship is long, deep, historical, multi-dimensional, and I don't think that the Gulf states will be able to maneuver in and displace them. I mean, if one thinks about it, I mean, the Gulf moment for influence over the Gulf states, over the US, was in May 2025, when Trump made his first international visit during a second term to Riyadh, Doha, and Abu Dhabi, and we saw MBS exerting quite a lot of influence over Trump, particularly on the Syria file, in terms of accepting Sharia as a legitimate Syrian president, and also being willing to lift sanctions and ultimately lift the Caesar sanctions. So we've seen the Gulf states be tremendously influential on some files, but when it comes to an issue like Iran, they are, I wouldn't say they're even second, third, or fourth tier influencers there. Israel is number one, and there will be other actors in there. They can try all they want, but Israel is going to remain the number one sort of regional ally for the US for a very long time to come.
I mean, is that sustainable? I mean, because this is mainly because Israel seems to be, they're acting unilaterally a lot of the time. They're breaking all sorts of international conventions. The human rights atrocities are appalling. Benjamin Netanyahu has been sought out at The Hague. They're under trial for genocide. Is it sustainable? I mean, because I do agree with you, the relationship with the US and Israel is very deep. There's many reasons for it, strategic, cultural. But for how long can this be sustainable, given that, Israel now seems to be upsetting more and more and more Arab states? If they're not showing this, their anger overtly, they definitely are internally very upset. So how is this going to be sustainable?
I mean, it's a very important question, and it's one that I've dwelt on for quite a long time, certainly with colleagues here at Chatham House, and certainly during the two years of war that we saw in Gaza. But one thing that I remember having quite a sort of a long engagement in this region is that in 1987, with what was then termed the first Intifada, where we had images of Israeli soldiers breaking bones, of children children throwing rocks, and Israeli soldiers obviously with their hard weapons. I mean, is the Israeli Israel's reputation, Israel's image took a very large hit, but it recovered from that. We saw the second Intifada coming out from 2000, very different, very brutal, very damaging images for Israel, equally for the Palestinians as well, with suicide bombers. But it sounds almost trite, but we've been here before. We've seen these cycles before, and there may be sort of fissures and cracks in the way that Israel is perceived, around the world, and they may be even present sort of within the U.S. system. But the U.S. system seems to be structured so much so that's unlikely to change the strong dynamics, not for the time being at least, in the way in which the U.S. system and Israel interacts. Maybe we could project 20-25 years out from here, that will shift, that will change as the political system in the US seems to be going through some kind of fundamental shift that might lead it to another place. But in the interim, I just see that that Israel relationship is going to endure.
Okay, we don't have much more time left, but let's just focus a bit on Iran. So Iran, there's not a lot of information coming out, but obviously they've taken some massive hits to their navy, to their launching positions, their infrastructure, key infrastructure. They've obviously utilized, and they will continue to utilize a lot of their missiles and drones. It's unsure if the leadership, the regime, will actually be able to stay in place. They seem to be curtailed a lot. Many people have been killed. It's uncertain how healthy the current new supreme leader, the son of Ali Khamenei, is Mujtaba Khamenei, how healthy he is. Do you think Iran, especially the IRGC and the leadership of Iran, do you think they'll be able to stay in place? And what are their options? Because they so far have been keen on a ceasefire, simply because they don't want to be subject to sitting ducks and have their lawn mowed whenever they can. But just what are their options, and how seriously have they been depleted?
Sure. So how seriously have they been defeated? I mean, it's very difficult to tell without very good information, very good intelligence. But from what we can see, from the way that they're continuing to strike out and to respond. I mean, we've seen that response to the attack on South Pass. It seems that they're enduring. We read and we know that the institutions, the institutional depth at the IRGC and the state structures are very strong. They seem to be set on very strong foundations, and they've sustained nearly 20 days of war. And despite reports that they're getting low on drones, getting low on missiles, their capability to launch has been compromised. They are responding with force, and they seem to be responding with even greater accuracy at the moment. However, I would always caution sort of analysts and ourselves alike, sort of arguing that certain structures are almost impermeable. In the past, we looked at Syria. We thought the Syrian regime was going to survive. There are reasons why it could be swept away by HTS, but I mean that happened in less than a week. We thought when there was changes in Saudi Arabia, when MBS was really coming to the fore and pushed aside Mittab bin Abdullah, who had been head of the Saudi Arabian National Guard, there had been an expectation that Sang would come in support of Abdullah. It didn't. So sometimes organizations look very, very strong, but they are paper tigers. IRGC does appear to be very strong. It's withstood this very strong assault, and that leads it to where its options are. Its options are just to continue as it is. It's not going to be the one to. It's not going to want to come to the table. It's not going to want to negotiate. It would be pushing, I think, for Trump to declare victory, sort of call a unilateral ceasefire. It would then continue to carry out strikes because, one, it will want to demonstrate to its own population, but demonstrate to the region that it has survived, a sustained war with the world's one superpower and that regional power, Israel. And it will want to also set a deterrent by continuing to carry out strikes across the Gulf and to stop of its own accord, stop of its own achieving, of its own accord.
Neil, Quilliam, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.